There are 10,000 ways to die in the 41st millennium, but only one way to truly live, to serve the Imperium without question, without hesitation, and without hope of reward. Across the endless void, humanity claws at survival beneath the indifferent gaze of a decaying God-Emperor. Yet on this day, amid the cold silence of Segmentum Solar, something unnatural carved a wound through reality, not through the warp, but through the physical void itself. It began as a point of light, no larger than a pinprick, a distant gleam mistaken for a meteor. Within moments, it grew to a sunburst, cascading through the Emperor's domain with such brilliance that Auspex arrays failed, and Vox networks screamed static. Entire patrol fleets went blind. The inquisitorial frigate Admonitus was first to intercept, its captain, Lord Inquisitor Thal Rennick, ordering immediate containment. What they found was no ship, no weapon, no warp entity. It was a man, drifting unconscious in the void, his body untouched by vacuum, his cloak of tattered red and blue trailing like a comet's flame. Rennick ordered the containment bay sealed and sanctified. Even the Adeptus Sororitas aboard knelt in silent awe. Every sensor reading defied comprehension. Perfect human physiology, no gene tampering, no augmentic interference, but strength and cellular energy output beyond anything recorded in Imperial history. Saint or Xenos, it matters not, Rennick murmured. The Emperor's light reveals all. He crossed himself with the Aquila and prepared interrogation rites. Yet as they brought the being aboard, a strange stillness fell. The ship's machine spirit hummed in harmony. Vox frequencies stabilized, and the Geller field brightened, as if the vessel itself breathed easier in his presence. Even the tech priests whispered of miracles. Hours passed before the being awoke. His eyes opened, twin suns of blue fire, and he inhaled deeply, as though his lungs could drink starlight. Guards raised their lasguns, and Rennick's servo skull recorded every twitch. But instead of violence, the stranger simply rose, calm and unarmed. "Where am I?" His voice resonated like a cathedral bell, filled with something the crew hadn't heard in centuries. Hope. Rennick hesitated, pistol drawn but wavering. The stranger looked down at his hands, flexing them, testing his strength as if uncertain it still existed. Rennick's instinct screamed danger, but something deeper whispered reverence. "You are aboard the Admonitus, under the authority of His Holy Inquisition. Identify yourself." The man paused. "My name is Carl L., but where I come from, they called me Superman." The words meant nothing to the crew, but Rennick felt the name like a pulse in the warp, not a taint but a clarity. The astropath later claimed to see golden light beyond the veil, a flame uncorrupted by chaos. For the first time in recorded Imperial history, the warp grew quiet. That silence frightened Rennick more than any demon scream. He ordered the stranger restrained, but no chain could hold him. None were needed. Superman obeyed willingly, stepping into containment as if to reassure them. When the Inquisitor demanded proof of loyalty, Superman only said, "Show me your people. I'll decide who needs saving." It was not arrogance, it was compassion, raw and terrible in its purity. Rennick reported immediately to the Ordo Hereticus. The transmission echoed through the subspace networks of the Imperium like a warning flare. A being of divine potential, untainted yet unbound by the ecclesiarchy, had appeared, and the reaction was inevitable. Some called him the Emperor's Son reborn. Others whispered of a false saint sent by chaos to mock mankind. Across the galaxy, from shrine worlds to fortress monasteries, the question spread faster than warp storms. Who is the man from the stars? As the Admonitus descended toward the hive world of Varanus Prime for evaluation, the stranger stood at a viewport, watching billions toil beneath toxic skies. The Inquisitor approached him cautiously. "You pity them," he said. "That's dangerous. Pity breeds rebellion." Superman's gaze didn't waver. "No, pity breeds mercy, and mercy might be what your empire forgot." Rennick said nothing. The phrase echoed long after, like a prophecy. Outside, the storms thickened, lightning crawling over the hull. Unseen by mortal eyes, in the depths of the Imperium, something stirred. 4 voices whispered in unison: curiosity, hunger, rage, and delight. A being of impossible purity had entered their realm of corruption. The warp shuddered. The game had begun.
The Admonitus broke through the storm clouds over Varanus Prime like a knife of light through the poisoned atmosphere. Below, the hive stretched endlessly, spires of black steel and ash that scraped the heavens, surrounded by oceans of industrial decay. It was not beauty that defined the Imperium, but endurance, and this world endured by the Emperor's grace alone. Yet, in that choking smog, for the first time in generations, the clouds parted and sunlight fell pure upon the city. It was enough to make billions lift their eyes in confusion. That light was not divine, not sanctioned. It came from the stranger. Kal-El stood within the Inquisition's landing craft, unchained yet watched by squads of stormtroopers. His cape fluttered faintly in the recycled air, and though he said nothing, the soldiers could feel it. He did not belong here. His strength was quiet, almost gentle, and that terrified them more than any demon. Rennick knew what awaited below. The ecclesiarchy, the Adeptus Mechanicus, and an envoy from the Adeptus Astartes. The Imperium tolerated no miracles outside its dogma. This meeting would determine if the being lived or was atomized before sunset. The Inquisitorial Council assembled in the Hall of Verdicts. Statues of saints towered overhead, their marble eyes weeping centuries of dust. Candles flickered beneath banners older than worlds. Every figure there had power to erase systems. Among them stood Canoness Mirabelle of the Order of the Ebon Chalice, Magos Dominus Reltec, and Captain Lucian Vallon of the Ultramarines' 4th Company, summoned from Crusade to evaluate the visitor. Superman walked between them, unarmed, his head bowed slightly, not in submission, but respect. Reltec's vox augments crackled as he circled the Kryptonian. Unpossible readings, photonic energy saturating every cell. He radiates enough power to run a forge world. The Magos reached to take a tissue sample and the needle shattered. Superman merely smiled faintly. "You don't need to test me. I'm not your enemy." Captain Vallon stepped forward, towering in ceramite blue and gold, his bolt pistol aimed squarely at Superman's heart. He said, "Everything not sworn to the Emperor is the enemy. So tell me, alien, who is your master?" Superman met the Space Marine's gaze, unflinching. "No one. Where I come from, I serve people who cannot defend themselves." That answer rippled through the chamber like heresy. Mirabelle's eyes narrowed. "Then you are no servant of the Emperor. Mercy without devotion is weakness." Superman looked toward the cathedral's stained glass, a depiction of the Emperor smiting heretics in holy fire. He said, "You call this mercy? You rule through fear. You worship a man who once protected you and turned him into a weapon." The words struck deep. Even the Ultramarine hesitated. No one spoke to the ecclesiarchy like that and lived. Rennick knew execution was seconds away. "You are not yet judged," he shouted. In that moment, a rumble shook the city. Vox officers screamed. Reports, mass psychic fluctuations, warp interference across the hive spires. The astropath choir wailed in agony as unseen claws scraped at reality. Chaos had heard. A crimson storm erupted beyond the cathedral's walls. Civilians burst into flame as demonic forms tore through the veil, their bodies made of shadow and hate. Sororitas squads rushed to the front lines, bolters singing prayers of fire. Valen's Vox flared. Demonic incursion confirmed. Seal the perimeter. The Emperor's name echoed in gunfire and dying screams. Superman turned toward the blast doors, his eyes glowing. "What is that?" he demanded. Rennick hesitated. "It's the warp. Hell itself." Superman didn't wait. With a sonic boom that shattered stained glass, he was gone. Through the walls, into the sky. Outside, the demons descended upon Varanus Prime like locusts of corruption. And then the light came. A single figure streaked across the heavens faster than thought, tearing demons apart with his bare hands. Beams of heat vision seared warp spawn into vapor. Citizens who had never seen sunlight now saw hope incarnate. The demons screamed as their forms disintegrated under his purity. Because in him there was no crack for chaos to enter. He was beyond fear, beyond sin, beyond the warp's grasp. From the cathedral's tower, Valen watched, awestruck. He fights as a Primarch might, yet cleaner, unburdened. Mirabelle crossed herself. If that is not the Emperor's hand, then what god have we angered? For 3 days and 3 nights, Superman defended Varanus Prime. He rebuilt falling towers mid-battle, shielded the wounded, and brought order where none had existed. Even the demons began to falter, their connection to the warp unraveling in his presence. The Inquisitor recorded everything. Humanity was seeing a miracle the ecclesiarchy could not claim. That made him a threat beyond imagining. When the final demon fell, the world fell silent. People cried in the streets, crying his name as though it were scripture. Kal-El hovered above the ruined spires, his cape stained with ash. When he approached, they needed help, so I helped. The Inquisitor studied him, torn between faith and fear. You've changed the balance of everything. You've shown them what hope looks like. The ecclesiarchy will never forgive that. Superman looked up at the distant stars. Then maybe it's time someone reminded them what humanity really means. Still with us in the darkness? Hit that like button if this tale chills your soul and prepares you for what's coming next.
The warp seethed. The mere existence of Kal-El had done something no weapon of the Mechanicus or ritual of the ecclesiarchy ever had. It had quieted parts of the Imperium. To the dark gods, that silence was blasphemy. Korn raged first, his voice a thunder that split the void. A warrior who kills without hatred, a butcher who feels sorrow, I will grind his bones to ash. Tzeentch laughed in rippling tones. He is possibility incarnate, the one who could unmake destiny. I must know him. Nurgle crooned, a soul without decay cannot bloom. I will gift him rot. And Slaanesh sighed, such purity, how sweet it will taste when broken. Across the galaxy, warp storms flared like infected wounds. On demon worlds, legions of horrors stirred from sleep, drawn by a hunger not for blood, but for the impossible purity of one being. Where chaos gathers, the veil thins, and where the veil thins, mortals suffer. On Varanus Prime, the victory celebrations lasted less than a solar day before the sky turned red again. Imperial augurs failed, vox channels died, and reality began to scream. Renick stood in the command bastion, staring at a hololith showing thousands of warp anomalies opening across the system. "They're coming for him," he whispered. Superman was already outside, hovering above the stratosphere. He could feel it, the pressure of something vast pressing against the fabric of space like an ocean of malice trying to drown the universe. His hearing filled with psychic echoes, a billion cries of despair, laughter, and promises. They tried to speak to him, to tempt him. "You could save them all if you only gave yourself to us. We will make you their God, their eternal light." He closed his eyes. For a moment, memories flickered. The faces of a lost world, of parents who taught him restraint, of cities bathed in sunlight. "I've seen gods before," he whispered, and rose into orbit. From the flagship Justicar Eternal, Captain Valen watched the sky tear open. Demonic warships, impossible shapes of metal and flesh, poured through the breach. He barked orders, "All batteries, fire! For the Emperor!" But the warp craft shrugged off macro-cannon fire like raindrops. Then a streak of blue and red cut across the void. Superman slammed into the first demon ship, tearing through its hull like paper, releasing imprisoned souls with a single motion. Explosions rippled in silence across space. Valen stared, speechless. "The Astronomicon helped me. He's fighting the warp itself." Down below, Renick watched Auspec's readouts spike beyond measurable limits. If the warp is focusing on him, then every planet in this sector might survive. The demons adjusted. A psychic tide surged, forming one colossal entity from 1,000 lesser horrors, a being of all four powers fused, a nightmare called the Harbinger of All Ends. Its face was an ever-shifting mask of rage, disease, lust, and deceit. It extended claws larger than cathedrals toward the lone figure in space. Superman met it head-on. Energy erupted like a new star, lighting the system brighter than any sun. The warp buckled. Each astropath within 5 light-years screamed as the clash echoed through the immaterium. The Harbinger spoke, its voice a million whispering gods. "You do not belong here." Superman's reply was calm, almost sorrowful. "I belong wherever people need help." The fight was beyond comprehension. Imperial ships were thrown from orbit as gravitational waves pulsed outward. Superman moved faster than light, punching through dimensions themselves. The Harbinger countered with psychic lashes that could erase minds. They shattered harmlessly against him. But the warp is endless, and even a god can tire. Each strike drained him. Each psychic scream dug deeper into his soul, showing him visions of every failure, every world he could not save. On the surface, millions watched the duel as auroras of red and gold burned across the heavens. Some prayed, others wept. Some whispered that the Emperor himself had returned. In the Inquisition bunker, Renick recorded the readings. "This is not a man. This is an idea given flesh." Then the warp screamed. Superman seized the Harbinger by its shifting throat and hurled it back through its own rift. The explosion collapsed the portal, imploding the demonic invasion in a single moment. For the first time in millennia, an entire warp storm vanished. Silence. No vox chatter, no screams, only the faint hum of cooling machinery. Superman drifted back into the atmosphere, bruised, his cape half burned, his eyes dim. He landed among the ruins of Varanus Prime, falling to one knee. He had won, but his expression was troubled. Renick approached carefully. "You banished a god," he said. Superman looked up. "No, I delayed it. They'll come again." Valen's voice came through the vox, low and reverent. "Then we will stand with you, brother." Superman shook his head. "No, you must stand for yourselves." The Inquisition frowned. "You don't understand the Imperium. Without the Emperor, humanity dies." Kal-El rose, blood from a dozen small cuts running like molten silver. "Then maybe humanity needs to remember what it's like to live." In the distance, the sun rose again, faint, filtered through ash, but real. Varanus Prime was silent for 7 days. No prayers, no orders, no war hymns. Only the slow rebuilding of a world that had glimpsed something beyond doctrine. The people whispered a forbidden word: hope. For the Imperium, hope without sanction was treason. Lord Inquisitor Rennick stood before a hollow display filled with sealed orders. Each came stamped with the sigil of a higher power. The High Lords of Terra had taken notice. Their message was simple. The alien is to be delivered to Terra for judgment. Rennick read it twice before closing his eyes. "They'll dissect him, or worse," he muttered. The Mechanicus wanted his blood, the Ecclesiarchy wanted his faith, the Astartes wanted his allegiance. None would get what they sought. Superman had spent the days among the people, ignoring command summons. He carried wounded from collapsed hab blocks, rebuilt bridges, and restored generators by hand. To the masses, he was already legend, a being who saved without demanding worship. To the priests, he was heresy incarnate. When Rennick found him, Kal-El stood atop a broken spire overlooking the hive. The wind tugged at his cape, now tattered but still bright against the gray smog. "They're calling you a saint, and they're afraid of you because of it." Superman's gaze stayed on the horizon. "I'm not their saint. I'm not their enemy either. They don't see the difference." Rennick hesitated before speaking again. "Terra has summoned you." Superman turned, calm as always. "Then I'll go. Maybe their emperor will understand." Rennick laughed. "Understand? The Emperor hasn't spoken in 10,000 years. You'll be lucky to reach the throne before they vaporize you." Superman's voice softened. "Then I'll walk if I must." The Inquisitor didn't know whether to admire or pity him. "You don't understand faith, do you?" Kal-El looked out at the people rebuilding below. "Where I came from, faith meant believing we could be better tomorrow than we were today. Here, it seems to mean surviving one more day in chains." The words cut deeper than any heretic's curse. That night, Varanus Prime burned again, not from the warp this time, but from the Imperium's own guns. The ecclesiarchy had declared a cleansing crusade. Any world touched by unholy miracles had to be purged to preserve doctrinal purity. When the first orbital bombardments began, Superman was already airborne. He caught descending bombardment shells mid-flight, hurling them back into the void. The sky became a storm of fire and defiance. From orbit, the Crusader fleet's admiral demanded surrender. Superman appeared on their view screen, eyes glowing like newborn suns. "Stop this. These are innocent lives." The admiral sneered. "Innocence died with old Earth. Obedience is survival." Then he gave the order to fire. In the span of a heartbeat, Superman became a living shield. He intercepted macro shells and plasma barrages, his body absorbing the fury of the Imperium itself. Cities that would have been erased stood only because he stood between them and the sky. Yet he could not be everywhere. Whole districts fell, thousands perished. When the smoke cleared, Superman hovered above the fleet, his cape reduced to ribbons. "You call this order?" he said through their vox. "You call this faith?" The admiral answered with silence, and then prayer. For the first time in his life, he prayed to the man he was ordered to kill. On the surface, soldiers of the Astra Militarum laid down their weapons. Civilians began painting the sigil of the House of El beside the Aquila. It spread faster than the Inquisition could burn it away. The Imperium had not seen such open devotion in millennia, and it terrified them. Inquisitor Rennick's reports grew darker. "He's changing them," he recorded, "not by decree, not by command, by example. They are beginning to remember what compassion feels like. That may be the most dangerous thing of all." Soon the conflict was no longer external, but ideological. Priests called him the false light. Others whispered that he was the emperor reborn, his mercy restored. The schism widened. Armies turned their guns inward. Faith itself was fracturing. Superman saw it and despaired. "I came to help, but all I've done is make them fight harder." Rennick looked older than ever, his eyes hollow. "That's the tragedy of the Imperium, alien. Here, even hope becomes a weapon." Then the summons came again, this time not from the High Lords, but directly from the Golden Throne. The Emperor had noticed. His agents arrived in ships the size of cities, not Astartes, not Inquisitors, Custodes. Their captain bowed slightly. "The Emperor commands your presence." Superman nodded once. "Then let's end this." As he departed, billions knelt, not in fear, but in reverence. From orbit, the fleet carried him toward Terra, toward the heart of divinity and decay. And though the void was silent, the warp whispered. The dark gods watched, eager. They knew what awaited, a meeting between light and a god long dead inside his golden cage. The journey to Terra was unlike any in Imperial record. The Custodes' golden warship, Oryx Spear, cut through the void on routes sealed even to the Inquisition. Within its sanctified halls, Kal-El sat in silence, gazing out upon the warp-shrouded stars. He had faced gods, tyrants, monsters, and worse, but nothing felt quite like this, being summoned by a god who had long ceased to live, yet could never die. Inquisitor Rennek had been permitted to accompany him, a decision he suspected was not mercy, but witness. If this goes wrong, they'll erase the entire system to bury it. Superman's reply was calm. Then we'll make sure it doesn't go wrong. The ship descended through the toxic clouds of holy terror. What once had been humanity's cradle was now a graveyard of continents, a planet entombed in the weight of its own worship. Mountains of skulls had turned to dust beneath the ecclesiarchy's endless edifices. Oceans had become chemical wastelands. From orbit, Superman could see only gold and decay, a cathedral built upon corpses. "This is your homeworld?" he asked. Rennick's voice broke slightly. It was. They were escorted through sanctums that few mortals had ever seen. Adeptus Custodes lined the halls, their armor glowing faintly with psychic gold. As Superman passed, their gazes followed, not hostile, but uncertain. For even they, the Emperor's chosen, felt something alive about him that Terra had not known for millennia. Finally, the great doors of the Sanctum Imperialis opened. The air was thick with the hum of machinery and the stench of incense. Inside, 10,000 priests chanted ceaseless prayers to sustain the corpse upon the golden throne. And there he sat, the Emperor of mankind, the master of humanity, a god chained to his own divinity. The light from the throne burned brighter than a star, yet behind it was stillness, no motion, no breath, no sign of life. Superman knelt instinctively, not out of reverence, but respect for the burden this being bore. "You've kept them alive," he said softly, "but at what cost?" A ripple moved through the chamber. The priests faltered. For the first time in 10,000 years, the air shifted. The throne's light flickered, then pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Rennek gasped. The Custodes fell to one knee. A voice entered their minds, vast and sorrowful. "You are not of my making." Superman rose slowly, meeting the gaze, or the illusion, of the Emperor. "No, but I've seen what you've built, a galaxy ruled by fear. Fear keeps them alive. Without it, humanity would fall to the warp. Fear isn't survival, it's surrender." For a long moment, silence. Then the Emperor's psychic presence surged. The chamber shook, the priest screaming as reality trembled. Visions poured into Kal-El's mind, images of the Horus heresy, of worlds devoured by chaos, of betrayal and madness. The Emperor showed him everything, every atrocity committed in his name. "This is the price of mercy," the voice boomed. "You cannot imagine the cost of compassion." Superman endured the storm. "Maybe you're right," he said through gritted teeth. "But I know that no one deserves to live without hope." The Emperor's light flared until it filled the entire hall. The Custodes fell to the ground, blinded. Rennek wept. For a moment, Superman vanished in the brilliance. Then it dimmed, and he still stood, his eyes burning gold. "You would defy a god?" the voice asked, softer now, almost curious. "No," Superman said quietly. "I'd remind him why he became one." And then, impossibly, the throne went still. The blinding light subsided to a calm glow, steady and quiet. Across the galaxy, astropaths reported a sudden clarity in the warp, fleeting but real. For the first time in ages, the Astronomicon shone without distortion. The Emperor did not speak again, but something had changed. Superman turned to Rennick, his expression weary. "I didn't save him, but maybe I reminded him there's still something left to save." As they left the sanctum, custodies parted silently. Outside, dawn rose over Terra, thin and pale, filtered through the poison sky. Rennick looked at the light and whispered, "Do you think you've changed anything?" Superman smiled faintly. "Maybe not today, but they saw it, and tomorrow someone will remember." Back aboard the Auric Spear, as it ascended into the void, the warp itself seemed to hesitate. For the first time, the Chaos Gods whispered not in anger, but in unease. Hope had entered their realm, and it did not belong there. In the millennia to come, the story of the stranger from the stars became forbidden scripture. Some said he was an angel who defied the Emperor. Others swore he was the Emperor's mercy reborn. Worlds whispered his name before battles, heretical prayers that filled inquisitorial vaults with ashes. Yet none could deny what had changed. The warp burned a little less fiercely. The Astronomicon's light grew a little clearer, and across countless hive worlds, the idea of goodness without fear began to take root. Inquisitor Rennick vanished from Imperial records soon after returning from Terra. Some say he followed the stranger beyond the segmentum solar. Others claim he was purged. The truth didn't matter. The Imperium endured, as it always had, but something new haunted its endless night. Not a demon, not a god, a memory. Of a man who did not belong, yet refused to look away. Of a being who faced hell and chose compassion. And in that fleeting moment of peace, even the Emperor's withered lips might have moved, whether in sorrow or in a smile. None could tell.